share a story I mentioned before. I used to live in Most Beach, and I had a neighbor that had one of these lifts, and I thought it was really cool. Because you never heard it, it was actually quiet. And my first term on the DNC voted I didn't support it to put a moratorium on mechanical lifts, which was years ago. It's not I never understood that because they were truly silent for me. And what I personally like about it is I know you will use it because you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on these lifts. You're not going to put a business in your garage. You're not going to live in a garage with $20,000 lifts in there. So, and if you do run your business out of a garage with lifts in it, I don't know what kind of business it is.
Or a barbecue.
Yeah. I think it's, I went to the community outreach meeting, I saw the design, I think you're a great architect, I think it works awesome, so go for it. I just feel that.
I think it's a good project. I'll just say something about the lifts. I have a friend that has had a property at the corner of Speedway and Rose for the last 30 plus years. And they actually built their garage long ago with lifts in mind, and for the last 20 some odd years have been using them on a daily basis. They last a really long time. Have you ever gone into a locker shop? A lot of auto repair places, they all use these things, so there's nothing magic about them. They're mechanical, they break, and they get fixed. But they work really well. So I think that's what and I support this. Although I'd like to see fully
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the project as presented, based on the fact that the project visits scale character and adds in the community, maintains an existing 1900 structures with minor modifications, and creates 4 off-street parking spaces on Walk Street. No, it creates 4, and I said new ones. It said it creates. That's right.
So it's creating 2.
Well, okay, the project has 4 off-street parking spaces.
I'll second.
Give me 1 second, please.
I already did so.
Okay, wait a second. I just want to make sure I have it right. So is this the motion we have? Because I want to make 100% sure we are all on the same page. The exact wording of the motion is what everybody agrees is written. The VNC support, the VNC supports this project as it fits the character, scale, and mass, maintains an original 1900 structure with minor modification, provides 4 off-street parking on the Walk Street. Right? Anybody disagree that that was the motion that was read? Speak down for everyone here. Okay, good. All right, so we got John who made the motion. Robert seconded the motion. All right, so all those in favor of the motion? Steve? Is a yes?
In favor?
Yep. I gotta write everyone's names down now too. Who said that? Okay. Robert, are you in favor? Okay, Rich? Robert said yes. Whisper? I support it as well.
John, yes.
Okay. Lisa? So you'll be on the DNC agenda coming up. 20th, I believe.
Yeah, May 20th.
May 20th. Okay.
You know, the
Okay, next case is 1511 S Abbot Kinney Blvde. It's a change of use. It's a 3-story unit, change of use from artist in residence to artist in residence on the 3rd floor with retail on the 1st and 2nd floors. Manush is our staff member on, so I'll let you present what you learned.
So the representative of the architect are here to the project. So the change of artist residence on the 3rd floor and the 1st and 2nd are going to be retail. The existing building, the front side remains, in the back they are changing the structure to accommodate for 14 cars, which 10 of them will be by what
stand up, you let me know. Good place, guys. I have individual plans here. I've got these out.
So just in case anyone wants to see the drawings, they're over here.
My name is Carlos Frencha. I am the architect of the project. We have an existing three-story building, which is permitted at this point as an artisan residence. Our proposal is to do a change of use that would leave the third story as the artisan residence. And I'll walk this here in a little bit, for both of you, for all of you, and convert the first floor and the second floor to retail. The building, of course, the two sides would remain as is, with the property line. The front side will remain as is with some minor modifications for an elevator internally. And the exterior will be modified to allow for the parking that we're proposing. The building, you guys need me to jump around or I have the site plan, which will remain as is. There'll be no increase. There's some modifications being done internally due to my handicap access, due to my circulation, my fire separation, but it's all internal within the envelope of the building. The first floor will then, from the rear portion, will allow for a handicap parking space and for the two parking spaces only for the single-family dwelling on the third floor, which is the artisan residence. The second floor will be modified, then have it as an open shelf, so when the retail person comes in here, they'll be able to do whatever internal improvements, nothing outside the envelope, but all internally. They will be able to do those improvements. The third floor will remain as is, as a single-family retailing use, with its own separate access way. So if you're going from the street level, you'll be able to go directly to your third level without interrupting the new retail space. The first and second floor will also have their own independent access, of course, coming to the front door and be able to have their access. So the intent is that we would then take the front of the perimeter would remain the same, the back of it would be modified to allow for the loading zone and for the parking spaces allowed. So the big question, of course, is parking. The parking at this point, when I do the conversion of the 2,356 square feet, right here in this area, where you see the little packet, for the residents, I'm going to keep the two spaces. Those will remain. The conversion from retail, from residential to commercial, that requires me to put 10 spaces. The beach parking calculation requires me to provide 2 parking spaces, and I'll also be providing 1 handicap. So altogether, this comes out to 14 spaces. So the intent is to provide the 1 parking space, which would be the bicycle. Number 2 is I would provide 1 handicap parking space and the 2 habitable, 2 other parking spaces for the residential. And then the proposal would be to do a buyout 10 parking spaces. So overall, the structure stays the same, the buildings will stay the same, but the issue of course is the parking.
Second and third for the bike space.
I have one for, I get credit for one for a bicycle. I can take 1 parking space. Number 2 is handicap, which I am providing on site. And number 2 is the habitable. I have provided 2 parking spaces, which will still remain existing. So altogether it's 14. So I'm providing 4 on site. One of being the bicycle space.
What's the dollar amount of the total of the 10?
What's 10 of 18? Yeah, so 10 of 18.
Is that it? All right, so what the public comment is, if anybody's got public comment, can you sign up here? What I need to do is open public comment with a set number of people. Just by policy, public comment takes 4 hours.
One more thing, we did have our community meeting out on the site. We only had 2 people show up. And it seemed to be against it. 3 people, sorry.
I thought we had 4 people, we did a 500-foot outreach, 500 people, and 4 people showed up, and they were all approving. They thought it was, because we're not changing the facade or anything, and they didn't have the right.
Sorry.
Yeah. How many consequences are required?
14.
14, and you had how many?
4.
Did the rest of the beach impact? You're going to pay for them?
Yes.
And how much do you have to pay?
I think it was 18,000. 18,000 per space.
At this time.
You have 14 required property.
Yes, that was correct.
Okay, so we've got 3 public comments. Peggy Kennedy first, please.
Hi, Peggy Lee Kennedy, and I'm just so concerned that this committee is not recognizing the gridlock that we are all living in Venice with the shortage of parking and the terrible traffic. So I can't imagine why any variances would be allowed on any parking, period.
Thank you. Deborah Shaver.
Yeah, I have a concern about the parking as well. As many of you know, I had a store on Abbot Kinney very close to that for 5 years, and I know what the parking is like on there. No amount of money can make up for 10 parking spaces on that street. No amount of money. And the people of Venice don't see that money. The people of Abbot Kinney don't see that money. We don't get extra customers in our stores because of that money. It does not help our street. It does not help our community. I think it's a bad idea to give any variances, especially in that very crowded part of Venice.
Irv Katz.
Yeah, actually, I really do. I have a question. The 2 retail spaces, I'm hoping that they won't turn into restaurants. As most of you know, Abbot Kinney is overloaded with restaurants. The entire neighborhood in that area of Venice is overloaded with restaurants. The last thing we need is more destination-bound restaurants taking up parking and creating a nuisance for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. I suppose close the public comment.
My question is, what is the impact of the consequences of losing one Augustine residence unit? Can we do that? Can we say that something is dedicated to an Augustine residence and then now say somebody wants to remove it and we say, okay, that's another thing?
Okay, so I close the public comment. Start on this side, Robert.
There are certain things that are allowed. You check that zone parking. In Lupc, there are certain things that are not. You can only say 50% of the beaches have some as a rule. You have 2. So that means you have to provide 4 spaces on site.
No, I'm only invited to the parking spaces, that's a good, that's the floor area, and that's what that calculation, we check that calculation directly.
The calculation is right, that you're required to have 2 beach impact zone parking spaces, but you can't do in Lupc's for both of those. You can do 50% of your biz parking. And there's other restrictions on what you can do in Lupc's for. So while the city may allow you to pay in Lupc's in some situations, the coastal commission definitely won't, because they know that the city doesn't I'm not asking you to respond, just,
Oh.
the city might allow you to the coastal commission. So, I think that you're mistaken with this going forward, because if anyone goes to the coastal commission, my impression is that this will not be public.
May I respond to that or no?
Sure.
I'd rather just,
Okay, so first of all.
we'll give you a chance to respond once.
Okay, now just, for
Just
question.
for explanation.
On A2, which is your plot plan, there's no trash, recycling, or anything else. And since every square foot has been taken by the uses that you show there, I guess that's something that would have to be addressed. You do have to have trash because you have an alley and people in the back. Storing it in the alley would be unacceptable. Now, knowing Glenn personally and knowing when he built this building, knowing that it was built under the specific plan, knowing how the specific plan works within the parking, it was designed for adaptive reuse. It was not designed for new construction. This project was just built a few years ago, and it doesn't comply to the requirement for a new. Now, you don't have to believe me, but the certified land use plan, which was certified by the Coastal Commission, which is the plan that the specific plan was designed on, actually has much different wording and much stricter wording when it comes to fee schedules. And in 2012, the city of Los Angeles hired a firm as part of the West Los Angeles Transportation Corridor specific plan that's being documented right now. And the document came out of that talked about in parking not being viable at $50,000 per space. Although the ordinance in our specific plan says that you could do it at 18, the Coastal Commission plan says you got to do it for what the real value is. So you're looking at a cost of probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 per space, because you haven't started to consider the land value of $50,000 per space. I guess if you wanted to talk about you spending $1.8 million to $2 million for a parking lot in Venice, I would be happy to start talking about entertaining something different. But I don't believe that's on the table at this point. As I understand it from the city, there is no mechanism for a developer to pay into the Blue fee at $2 million for a project like this, because the ordinance says otherwise. So I will have to vote against it. Other than that, I think it's a nice building, and I haven't spent a whole lot of time understanding how the fire exiting is going to work for the residential unit down through 2 retail spaces. And like I said, I know when Glenn built the building that it was designed for him and his personal business. And having fire corridors and 2 exits down from the 3rd floor through 2 retail spaces, you can enter the retail spaces. I don't see how that's laid out here. It still looks to me like you're using common stairways. So it would be a difficult project if I was spending the time to do that kind of detail work. And what Robert, I just wanted to ditto that. The DIZ parking is only allowed to be purchased at 50% of it's allowable. As far as the staff report goes, I would like to see in the future more wording about how many in-lieu parking spaces are being requested, because it doesn't actually state anywhere. Not that I saw. It says parking total spaces, 10 buyout, it doesn't say in lieu. And since the code word is in lieu. And then, of course, the BIZ parking is a critical component that's separate from the in lieu parking. And that's a requirement of the project. That's now to be stated in all stuff. That's all for me.
What's on the second floor today?
It's all ours like residents right now.
So there's no retail being done on the 2nd floor today? Nothing, just someone's living there, for sure?
I wanted to hear what you had to say about the parking a minute ago, and I also am concerned about the artist and residence issue, and Sue Kaplan raised a minute ago, and wondered if you had any comments about that.
The only thing I can respond to is that, I'm trying to say it the most sensitive way I can. We're not applying for a requirement of conditional use permit, anything of that sort. We're just kind of look at the code and kind of follow down the code. In response to Robert's comment, is that I'm using the handicap as my 50% of my parking, which I'm allowed to use. So I comply with that. As far as not being able to change the use, well, that's not for the board to request to change the use and say, but here's these parameters that the code has allowed me to use, and that's what I'm applying for. I'm not asking for special circumstances. It says that you can do a buyout, therefore I'm saying, okay, so we'll do a buyout. If it needs to be more money, then I just don't feel that that position to be talking here. That's something we need to be dealing with the planning and zoning department to make it $100,000 for parking. But right now, what we're asking is just what the board allows us to use.
If everybody could speak up, it would really help. It's so
Sure,
hard to do that.
absolutely. Thank you.
Sorry, I thought I stood up.
And two of these are tandem, right?
Yes.
Steve,
Comments or questions?
comments, questions?
Okay. You know, I guess for the most part, I agree with my colleagues. I'm concerned about the parking. You know, if you were to secure 10 spaces elsewhere, physical spaces, I'd be much more agreeable to it. You know, if I had any certainty that the money, although we all agree it's probably too low, you know, stayed in Venice and was reinvested in Venice, I feel much better about it. You know, I understand you're complying with the existing code, but you know, from my perspective, I'm only advisory, so I kind of get to, I feel like I can say whatever I want, whether it's within my purview or not. It's just my opinion. So, you know, I'd have a hard time supporting the project based on that. Architecturally, I'm wondering if removing the garage doesn't create an attractive nuisance back there as to how you're going to defend that space and secure it. Is there a gate we're not
There'll
seeing?
be a gate.
That's something I'd be interested in seeing and what that looks like. And then struck me as odd that you're replacing two what I would consider sort of absurdly small windows, and you're replacing them with a new project. And you know, I don't even know if you could build windows that small. By the time you get the jams in there, it's going to be really hard to install, and you're going to be left with a tiny bit of glazing. So if you're making the effort to change them out, I'd encourage you to go a little big with the glass.
I just have one more comment. Is Sue still there? Sue, to respond to your question about the removal of artist in residence spaces on Abbot Kinney, if you go back and you read the intent of the documents, the creation of the art craft zone overlay was to allow artists to be able to display their work in a corridor that was being called an art craft zone corridor. It's the old, there's a couple of places in Venice where it exists, but Abbot Kinney is the primary area. And the idea was that at the time the plan was being created, it was clear, and all the documents reflect this. This isn't my word for it, because I know some people like the question at this point. But the idea was that we realized there wasn't a way to do commercial parking on the street. That building commercial stores, the parking just was never going to balance. So what was the way of being able to keep an artist on the street? And the way was to allow them to have a parking reduction, 2 parking spaces per residential unit, and allow them to create their own parking in that space. So they ended up with a special code designation. It's actually a special zone area. It's called the CA overlay. And that CA overlay allows them to sell their retail goods that they create as an artist out in their space. And they're allowed to have a gallery to show their work. So are we losing the artist in residence concept? Well, the artist in residence concept was created because we had a lack of parking and realized that this was a commercial corridor and we wanted to keep it a commercial corridor. But at the same time knew that there wasn't parking, so we wanted to do something. And yeah, we would lose an artist in residence, but on the other hand, if we gain retail, an artist could certainly sell their work out of retail, or could quite possibly work out of retail. So it wouldn't necessarily be a trade-off from the standpoint of losing one and gaining the other, but the balance was parking versus no parking. So the reason this building was able to be built is because it was an artist in residence. And if they could now park it, being a retail would be perfectly acceptable. There's other retail spaces on the street where artists are selling their work, galleries, Well, a gallery can exist in a retail space.
Just a quick question, is that okay, Jake?
Great.
Sorry. The commercial aspect of the artist in residence would not be lost, but the residence part, which is really the problem in Venice for the artists, will be lost, right?
It still exists. It's only
You
third
could
floor.
look at it.
Only one floor instead of 2 floors, yes.
Yeah, but I still
So
have-
we're losing one artist residence, and a lot of artists need residence.
No, it's
Just saying, that's all.
You're reducing the size of the residence and increasing the size of the retail.
It's only always been one. It's just, instead of having 4,000 square feet, you only get a, you know.
The big difference in this case is that to have a legal operation, to have a legal use there, you have to be the artist who's creating the artwork that's being sold. With a retail store, you can buy goods from China, you can do, you can open a dress shop and buy it from here.
But you can't live there.
That
That's the difference.
they cannot have in an artist in residence. They can have it if it's retail. They can only have goods that they create in an artist in residence.
Right.
And the problem is that there's, not very many artists these days that can afford spaces on Abbot Kinney.
Question, a clarification. So we're saying that when this was built as an artist in residence, the only commitment to keeping it that way without required parking was that an artist had to be living there that was selling the goods.
Well, the required parking was there. The required parking for an artist in residence is 2 parking spaces per unit. It's the same as a residential space. But the retail component, to sell out of your home, you're not allowed to do. To sell out of an artist in residence, you are allowed to do, so long as it's goods that you can create as an artist. And there's categories that define what an artist is, and you have to be registered with the city of Los Angeles and all sorts of other things. Yes?
Jim, just a quick question from my own curiosity. Is there, in the artist in residence concept, is there any sort of deed restriction or affordability index, or is it market?
It's market, unless there's some other restriction that goes on there. I can send you guys all a copy of the section of code. Actually, the artist in residence code was changed about 2 years ago by one person at the top of city planning that decided that the percentage of artist versus residents would completely change. In the old code, which was created back in the late 80s, it was a 70-30 split. So 70% was allowed to be artists and 30% had to be residential. In the new code, it's now 90-10. And the reason that it was changed, now 90% residential, 10% artists. And the reason that that was done was because they wanted to create a capability for the developers downtown to be able to get FHA loans, which are the federal housing loans. And the only way they could do that was to claim that it wasn't commercial intent.
That makes sense, because if the residents are market rate, it doesn't restrict the
Right.
artists.
But on the other hand, it took out a lot of incentives to create artist spaces. And of course, it completely blew away the tax incentive to be able to deduct 70% of your home as a business use. And it's a required business use by the city. So, you have one more question?
I don't want to turn this into a town hall, but I get what you're saying, but when it is arguable, in that case, my question was, what are we losing by giving up that second artist in residence? And if the intent of the Venice Pacific plan is to create these places where artists can sell their work and we get past the parking crunch, by us allowing artists in residence to be changed over to commercial, we're losing the intent of the Venice Pacific plan. So my question to you guys is, how important is it to us as a community to have these artists in residence areas?
Well, the building is there now, is not losing anything.
We're losing an artist in residence.
No, there's one and it's still there.
No, there are 2 now, and there will only be 1.
No, there was one reduced to half the size.
blending of use.
So we're still keeping the artist.
I'm still keeping
The residential component becoming small.
Smaller.
So, but it's becoming a residential home, not an artist in residence.
No,
Remaining artist in residence.
so there's really no shift there, except that now what they're applying for is the retail use. And as far as the concept of losing an artist in residence, remember the artist in residence was created to allow the retail space to exist for the artist. And if the retail space exists for the artist as commercial retail rather than artist in residence, because somehow there's a parking structure that's built in an overlay zone or something, somehow there's a parking lot that's built at Westminster School, or who knows. It allows everybody to convert their artist in residences to legal retail. The same retail can still exist. You're not taking it away. You're not losing, you're losing residential, but you're not taking away the artist value. But again, the problem comes back, that, is an artist really able to afford to purchase and work on Abbot?
I don't think that's the question. The Venice specific plan doesn't address that. That's not.
Actually, the land use plan goes into a lot more detail, and if you look in the archives, you can read about
I
how the
know,
whole
but
concept
it
is
doesn't.
made. Some other time.
Right.
So,
Town hall.
all right, so we have a motion crafted. We have a motion crafted. Anybody have a motion that you would like to?
Wasn't there a motion as part of your staff?
No.
Do you want to make a motion? Normally, the staff person would make it.
I know.
Just make a motion. It doesn't.
Here, everybody seems like they're not, I feel neutral right now, because I presented the project and I'm not putting it together.
Right. Your motion can be in support of the project as presented, or it can be opposed to the project as presented, and then we as a committee as a vote up or down.
I presented, I'm in favor.
You're in support of the project, so make the motion to support the project as presented.
I support the project presented.
So there would have to be a second on that motion for us to be able to consider it.
Discuss it.
Is there a second? So the motion dies. Is there another motion?
Yeah.
So we can discuss it.
Right.
Ultimately, we'll vote on it and they fail.
Okay.
Right. So Robin second.
Robin seconds it to support the project as presented.
Now we discuss.
Robert?
I think I said all I needed to say. I think that this is, parking is, not appropriate for being moved. This should be, turned down. I think they should keep it as it is. It's a recent construction.
I'm just going to go along with Robert's.
You guys? Comments?
I just quick comment, I
Can
think,
you speak up for a step dissection?
sure, I think the second floor retail is always sort of
front yet. The people in the front are thanking you. No, there's 4 seats.
Well, I'm in agreement with my colleague. I would be much more interested in this project if you were able to present a very robust transportation management plan that addressed car trips and stuff, but given the current parking demand, I think, and the 10, in lieu spaces, I have some questions about the project.
Question?
Okay, all those in favor of the motion as presented? Nobody's in favor of it? Even the makers,
Not even the makers?
in the second are not in favor of your motion? You had talked out of your own motion that easily? All right, so the motion dies unanimously. Oh, you're in favor? Okay. Okay, so, well, Steve is a no, correct? Robin is a no, Ranush is a yes. You're an abstain, okay? I am a no, no is a no, no, okay. So is there a new motion to be made?
Sure, I'll make the motion. I make the motion that we deny the project is basically the same thing we just did. It does not meet the intent of the land use plan or the specific plan. It does not address the terrible shortage of parking we have on Abbot Kinney. And, you know, I just feel like it's sort of an insult in front of the community with the project like this.
No, that it was recent construction.
Very recent construction. It's built the last 6 years.
So let me paraphrase and read it out. The way I interpreted your motion, correct me if I'm wrong, that the VNC does not support the project and supports denial of the project based on project as presented, based on it does not meet the intent of the land use plan or the specific plan, please listen, does not provide additional physical parking, is I think what you meant by what you said.
There's no trash or recycling.
Is a recent construction and therefore should remain as it was built. Is that exactly what you meant? Okay, so just read it again. Okay, the VNC does not, this is a draft motion, the VNC does not support and recommend denial of the project as presented because, one, it does not meet the intent of the land use plan or the specific plan. Two, it does not address physical parking. Three, it does not provide trash or recycling. Four, it's a recent construction. And five, therefore, it should remain as was built.
Okay, we left out one thing. We left out that the use of in lieu fees as presented is inappropriate.
Can I tie that into the first one? Does not provide additional physical parking and the use of in lieu fees. Robert?
As proposed is inappropriate.
And BIC parking is only allowed to be purchased at 50%.
Like, I think he addressed it. I think he said that you can just provide for space.
Can I just leave that? I think you've said enough with does not add additional parking. The use of in lieu of fees is inappropriate. I think we dive into more details. Okay. So I'm going to read it one more time before we go to our second. Nope. I'm going to read it again. I want everyone to know 100% clear exactly what the words of our motions are. VNC does not support the project and recommend denial of the project as presented because, one, it does not meet the intent of the land use plan or the specific plan. Two, does not provide additional parking. Use of in lieu of fees as proposed is inappropriate. Does not provide trash or recycling. It's a recent construction. It should therefore remain as it was built. Is that your motion? Yes. So,
I have a question about the question.
you realize I'm going to have to read it again.
What is the date of, how is the date of construction relevant?
Because it was built post the specific plan. So pre-specific plan, there was wording that said an adaptive reuse concept was we don't want to change the core of our community. We like the structures that are there. We don't want to tear down the historic buildings. We want to reuse what's physically there. And the way to do that is through a buyout program. Rather than tear the building down, let's put in something that allowed parking to be purchased, thereby reusing the space to a use that would conform today, but without having the parking on site. And when you build a new building, the concept is that you provide the parking for the new building's use. The adaptive reuse, well, the community hasn't changed.
Right, to me, it was a little misleading that
Let me get Adam to say
it seems like it should be given the date of construction, but in and itself, finding out that it's recent construction, that doesn't.
So given the date of construction, it doesn't conform to adapt to the adaptive reuse concept. I think that is clear. Yes, you're correct.
Given, what's the,
You don't know what I was looking for.
2008.
2008 was the date of certificate of occupancy?
I'm gonna go with given recent construction to be built under the current specific plan.
Yes.
I don't wanna put facts in that I don't know.
She said that's what she said.
Both the applicant and the staff person.
I have the copies of the building permits, so I believe it's 2008.
Okay, given 2008 recent construction.
The project is not conform to the adaptive reuse concept as described in this plan.
Adaptive reuse plan. Okay, all right, here we go one more time. Venice Neighborhood Council does not support, not to continue, right, further. Venice Neighborhood Council does not support the recommended ballot of project as one, not be content to land use plan or specific plan. Two, does not address physical parking, does not address physical parking, use of the lieu fees as proposed and appropriate. Three, given the 2008 recent construction, the project does not conform to adaptive reuse plan. Does not provide trash or recycling. Four, no trash or recycling, yeah. Should therefore remain as was built. Right?
See what David always has. Close one. Maybe we can. No.
Are we all clear on the all? I know, because we draft these things and can get confusing. I don't know how to do that in my last meeting. Anyway. All right. Is there a second on that motion as it was written? Really?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm going to call the question on Jim's motion, that is seconded by Robert.
Should be some discussion on it.
Is there any discussion?
Is there any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, Robert's a yes. Jim is a yes. I am a yes. Manush is yes. Robin? Abstain. Steve? Yes. One, two, three, four. 5 in favor, none opposed, 1 abstains. So put that in front of the VNC. It's a draft motion that we give to the VNC. You guys can present. Welcome to say why we don't agree with our motion, and this is the facts behind why it should be denied and rewrite. You understand the process? It'd be on the 20th. Yeah, good luck. Okay.